And we are live. We are live. Well, good evening, good evening, good evening. This, of course, as you know, is Everything Jersey City. We are continuing with our Friday night Black Lives Matter Forum. Before you have some amazing guests from different faith communities. And so tonight we're going to be talking about the Black Lives Matter movement, what it means in different areas of faith. And so tonight we're going to begin by, first of all, I want to just let each one of these beautiful people, you see these wonderful people in this room. These are some brilliant minds, some awesome faith leaders. And so I think I want to start out by letting everyone introduce themselves. Okay. And so we're going to ask each person to introduce themselves, tell us a little bit about the organization they represent, and then we're going to keep the conversation going in a wonderful direction tonight. I don't know about you guys, but I am excited about being here tonight. And as a matter of fact, even before we ask each person to introduce themselves, here's what I want you to do. I want you to
I am
share this.
excited about
I want you
being
to share this feed, share with your friends, share with your family, share with everybody you know. I mean, call folks you haven't heard from in years and get them on this feed. This is a conversation you absolutely want to be a part of. It's going to be enlightening, it's going to be challenging, but most of all, it's going to be productive. So please share this feed right now as we go into this conversation. And so we're going to begin by asking Pastor Richard if he would just tell us who he is, tell us a little bit about your organization, sir.
Oh, God bless you. My name is Pastor Rich McDonald. I pastor the Love of Jesus Family Church here in Jersey City. Currently, we're located in Temple Bethel. I've been pastoring here about 20 years, and it's a mixed congregation. And we love Jesus, doing our best to represent him. That's us. Me and
All
my
right.
wife. Me and my wife, we pastor together. My wife's Pastor McDonald. She pastors alongside of me.
Wonderful. Thank you so very much, sir. It's a pleasure to have you on this broadcast tonight. Next, I'm going to move on to Ahmed Shedeed. I hope I pronounced that right. If I did, please forgive me, sir. But would you please introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your organization?
Sure. My name is Ahmed Shedeed. And by the way, when he said Shaheed, Shaheed is like a martyr, but Shedeed is like strong man.
Yes, sir.
So I would like to be Shaheed one day. I would like to be martyred. Why not? Um, I am the president of the Islamic Center of Jersey City, located at 17 Park Street by Communable. Small street, but it's well known. We are just in the back of Lincoln High School. Uh, the Muslim community is the new kid in the block. We've been there for less than 50 years. We occupied the building in 1972. Our faith is just a follower of the Abrahamic tradition. So we share a lot of things that more than what we can dispute about. There is a lot of things, our background, always similar to how do we believe in our father Adam and Noah, Abraham, and all these lovely prophets. We all respect and love. And as I said, we share many comments. And I'm glad to be here and talk about Black Lives Matter.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so very much. Next, we have Mrs. Carolyn Somerville. I'm sorry. If you would just tell us a little bit about yourself and the organization that you represent.
Okay, my name is Carolyn Somarville, and I represent the Soka Gakkai International's Buddhist lay organization. So I'm just a lay person, but I've been 30 years practicing. The Soka Gakkai dates back to the 13th century, the teachings of Nichiren Daishonin, who fought against authoritarianism in government and among religious authorities, and he was persecuted. He was like the Martin Luther King of his day. So fast forward, we are in 192 territories and countries around the world. And Nichiren Daishonin Buddhism was brought to the U.S. in the 1960s by our current president, Daisaku Ikeda. So actually, we do have two community centers, one in Teaneck and one in Cherry Hill, but mostly we meet in people's homes. So in Jersey City, we have a number of small, what we call districts. We have one in the Newport area, one in Grove, Journal Square, and also in the Greenville area. So members come together and meet in people's homes, and it's based on dialogue, supporting each other, overcoming the challenges of life, and basically the practice is to become happy ourselves, to overcome our challenges, and to help others do the same. So it's really about an organization caring for all humanity. So it definitely connects to Black Lives Matter.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, thank you for lending your voice and your wisdom to this conversation tonight.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
Yes, ma'am. I'm going to move down to Pastor Lipe Fernandez. If you would just introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about yourself and your organization, sir.
First of all, very honored to be here sharing this time with amazing people, some friends, some new friends. And I'm a pastor of a Spanish church called Fuente de Salvación. Translation is Fountain of Salvation. And that church has been in the community for over 30 years. And recently joined forces with Pastor Dave Carment to open up a multicultural church, kind of like on a response to even the topic for tonight, understanding that you know, the faith that we profess is for everybody, and that we have something to we need more communities that will be inclusive and to support one another. So we have a brand new church called Liberty Church, Jersey City. And it operates out of the same place on Communicable Avenue, and very diverse community, obviously, of Jersey City. And just excited to join this conversation.
Thank you so much, Pastor Lipe. Thank you so much, man. And I love that church. I actually got to preach there about a week ago, so I really love that church.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Yes, sir. I'm going to pass it over to my friend, Pastor Donavon Shoemaker. If you would just do the same, introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about you and your wonderful church.
I am Donavon Shoemaker. I've been pastoring at Jersey City First Wesleyan Church. We thought about changing our name many a time, but we haven't. And if I did, it would be Reconciliation Church. But anyway, I've been there a long time. I'm getting wore out, I think. 48 years will be in 3 days. So, wow. And when I came, the neighborhood was going through a lot of change, and we have met the challenge of that. It's still changing, and now we've got to meet new challenges. And as things keep, you know, the people coming in and different things change constantly. The church itself is 100 years old. But the Wesleyan Church is a small denomination, is worldwide. I can't tell you how many countries, but they used to say the sun never sets on, you know, because it's on every continent. Nevertheless, it was an abolitionist movement when it began in 1843. It split off at the larger Methodist body, and then after the Civil War, you know, once organizations get in a movement, they never tend to go back to reunite on something. We do. We've been in the neighborhood. We seek to be a neighborhood church and to reach out to the people in the community.
Well, thank you so much, Pastor Shoemaker. And once again, we want to just thank all of our wonderful panelists tonight who have agreed to be a part of this wonderful conversation. If you have been anywhere in the world for the last few months, you should know that one of the topics that it's not just national, but it's global, and it's the topic of Black Lives Mattering. As a matter of fact, today we are celebrating Juneteenth, the day when slavery officially ended for all people. even though there was a proclamation made by President Abraham Lincoln in 1863, there were a group of people in Galveston, Texas, who did not get that news until 2.5 years later. And so we celebrate today the day that all African Americans found out that we were legally free. We'll just put it that way. And so in this climate, you have protests taking place. You have activists all over the place. You have hurt, you have pain, you have anger. Many of you, if you saw the video of George Floyd, it is still troubling to this day. And in times like this, one of the things that people are wondering is, where's the voice of faith leaders, right? People want to hear, what does the faith leaders have to say? And so tonight we have an array of people from different faiths who can speak to what we're dealing with from different perspectives. And so the first question I want to ask you all tonight is, how do you feel just your faith, how does your faith connect to Black Lives Matters? What do you feel as a person of faith? What can you say to people who are wondering, what does the faith community have to say about what's going on in the world? And I'll just ask anyone to please chime in on that. Okay.
Okay.
See, y'all gonna make me do a school and pick somebody. That's what it is.
No, I would like to begin in the matter because this is my first time in this series of discussion, and I would like to be a part of it. And I'm so glad that you asked me to join you. Personally, I'm speaking from a son of a Black man who was a son of a Black woman. My grandmother was the darkest woman I ever seen in my life. She came from Upper Egypt, but my grandfather was white. So again, my father was Black and my mother again was a very white woman. So we can mix, and we never felt that the difference between Black and white, at least in my family and the society, and everybody remember President Sadat, he was very dark and his wife was white. So that issue in Egypt is not really as hot as in America or other countries. Also, if we go back to the beginning, as we all believe in our Holy Quran and our Holy Book, the Lord said that He created He's actually talking to mankind, even talking to humanity. Is not even in this verse is not talking to the Muslim only. He's talking to all mankind. That He created one person, and from that soul created his wife. So they created from each other from the same material with equivalent and equality for both of them. There is no difference between the man and woman. And from that man and woman, there's a lot of children who came in different color and different types and shape and issue. But also with our scholars, they insist that Adam was Black because he was created from the soil of the earth, and which is dark. So we all go back to the same roots, and in that matter, it's not only Black life matter, but all lives matter. The first lesson that we learn in our holy books in Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, or any other religion, they always talk about the first lesson that we get. When one son of Adam, he got very upset jealous of his brothers, and he killed that brother. And he didn't know what to do with the body. He didn't know how to bury him. And God sent him that bird who taught him how to bury the son. But also in our holy book, God said that that's why it was written in every faith, especially in Judaism and the sons of Israel, that if somebody killed one person, he's like killing all humanity. And if somebody give chance to somebody to live, it's like he gave the entire humanity a chance to live. Because can you imagine, we are 7 billion people now. If the other son of Adam lived, he will get another 7 billion people. So that's what the meaning, that a life, a human being life, it's a very honored and respected by our faith. And killing somebody is killing, like killing everybody. Killing somebody has to be a reason. There has to be validation for that, as judgment or for wrongdoing or corruption. And I would like to just end that part by saying, in many places also in the Quran, and in one particular particular verse, our Lord said that we created you as a male and female, and tribes and different countries, different religion, different colors, just to know one thing, that the best of you who fear the Lord most, one of you that have respect for others most and love the Lord most. So this is the only scale that we have. This would be the difference between one man and another, is how he behave and how to act as a good citizen of this society, of the entire world society.
Wow. Wow. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you for that. Thank you. Anyone else want to chime in on this question?
Well, let me just start off by saying, as I mentioned, in 1960, our current president, Daisaku Ikeda, came to the U.S., and he came to encourage, at that time, it was like Japanese war brides who were in the U.S. and Japanese who were working here. But one thing that happened in October, he went to Chicago, and he was in Lincoln Park in Chicago. And he witnessed a scene that really disturbed him. There were a group of young white boys and an elderly white man sitting there watching the white boys and encouraging them. And every time a little white boy came up to the other white boys, that white boy was invited to join. But there was an African-American boy standing there that was never invited to join this group. So he just witnessed little white boy after little white boy being invited to join, to play ball with this group of young white boys. And so what happened at one point, one of the white boys sort of missed the ball and fell. And that little black boy started laughing. And then the elderly white man jumped up and started screaming at the little black boy, and he ran off. And President Ikeda saw that, and he tried to run after that little boy, but he couldn't catch him. And what that scene so disturbed him. And he really felt that he could see that if that little boy grows up and he witnesses and experiences those kinds of humiliating, exclusionary experiences, he could only imagine what his life would turn out to be, that kind of anger that would just boil over. So he vowed that he would really work to bring Buddhism to America. And the idea was he wanted that little boy, he wanted to build a society in the U.S. that would be truly worthy of this boy's love and pride. And so all of us in the Soka Gakkai, we know this story because it's in one of the books that President Ikeda has written. And so we all read it and we're all familiar with it. And just a few years ago, the SGI sort of had commissioned a statue to be placed in Lincoln Park to commemorate that event, but with the altogether, like the little black boy playing with the little white boys, like trying to create a new society on the backs of that very painful experience. And fast forward in terms of the killing of George Floyd, immediately after the U.S. Soka Gakkai national leaders wrote a statement that acknowledged as an organization our sadness and outrage at the blatant disregard for human life. And it goes on, and we are also reminded of the great mission we have to transform the deeply rooted racism in America and the disrespect for life that is so prevalent today. We strongly object to the needless and tragic loss of life due to violence at the hands of anyone. Based on awareness of the interconnectedness of all life, we recognize that our own happiness can never be built on the misfortune of others. So this message is read in all of our meetings this month. And I was even last week, there was a group in New York. I was on a Zoom meeting where they read this message, and then there was dialogue about racism and what we could do about racism, how we can fight racism in this society. So there's no doubt our organization understands that Black Lives Matter. Of course, it goes without saying, all lives matter. And that we understand that our country will never be whole without all of us being whole. And this is what we're working on, to make all of us whole.
Hey, thank you so much, so much. And I just wanted to, for those that are just tuning in, because I see so many people just tuning in, tonight we're having an interfaith discussion on racial injustice and the faith community. And so we started out really asking, how does our faith, how do we coalesce our faith to what we're seeing in the nation? So when you deal with racial injustice, how does faith play a part when dealing with racial injustice? And so we've heard from two wonderful people. So I'm going to ask one of our pastors, they would chime in and just deal with that question.
Well, I'll speak to it. Try. One of the things, some of the things that the Imam shared would relate to what we believe, that indeed that Adam was the beginning, and from that, and then Noah, after the flood, had 3 sons, and out of that came different. Actually, in a sense, as we look at it, different colors of people, race. There's only one race, but the thing that came out of our organization was that human life is human life. The only thing is, we become sometimes victims of our society, and they preach. Some of them even risked their lives. They worked with the Underground Railroad. One man was actually hung, but they thought he was dead, but he was only unconscious, and he revived, one preacher, and was able to come back to health. But over the years after the Juneteenth and all that, they thought they'd accomplished everything, and they kind of went into the whole thing with white, that in a sense superior, because they followed the way of segregation then, and this and that. And it's only been in more recent years that really those scriptures come back in the Bible, what it says. And this whole incident lately that came with George Floyd, but really before that, but it seemed like that was the trigger to really bring it into force, and the response. I think our nation, people are tired of all this. Many people, not all, because we see all the backlash and the continuing things that happen. But the people of God have to declare that human life, God created it, and we are made in his image. And in that image, all life, all human life is to be honored and revered and respected. And that's how it should be, unfortunately. But we learn too. There's things we learn. And even as I've been here in 48 years, I came here because I wanted to be in an urban area. I wanted to be where there's different people groups and all that. And our church, I'm a minority in the church, and a very small minority, in fact, at this stage of time. But oh, my wife has called me. Hold on. Oh, she forgot I had this thing. I'm sorry about that.
No problem.
So anyway, now I lost my track of time where I'm at. But so anyway, I came here with that purpose. But I've always wanted to be a listener and learn. And I find a lot of times I'm on the white side of things. Maybe I have like 2% Nigerian blood in me, DVD says. But anyway, but in all this, we learn. And part of it, you have to listen. A lot of times I find people I've been around like me have one. Oh, she's calling me again. I can't. I'm sorry. She's just not getting it. Let me turn this sound down.
If she calls one more time, you might have to take it,
We
man.
don't
We
mind if you answer.
But anyway, but you learn. You listen to people. There's things I when I came here, I said, that was kind of crazy, but is my inexperience, is not being around people, and you learn. It's a lifetime of learning. And sometimes I'm talking too much. Sometimes we just have to shut up and listen. So now I'm going to listen, okay, to Pastor Lipe.
Well, Pastor Lipe, I guess you're next.
You just pass it on. That's the way Shoemaker does. I agree 100%. The concept that we need to reclaim is the concept of Imago Dei. You know, we are created in the image of God, and you know, I agree 100% with Pastor Shoemaker. I respect him a lot. I think like there's a couple of streets named after him here in Jersey City. So when you've been like already around the block for a while, you know, Mr. Shedeed, very respectful man. Just the time that we were able to spend some time with the Muslim community, and you see the respect that this already come, and it's really because of the faith. I see it that way. You know, when we believe there's a higher power, you know, I respect everybody's opinion, but I feel that when we're going through the struggle, even people that don't believe in God call out to God, because sometimes, you know, you have a son in a hospital, you have a situation like this with George Floyd, you have a pandemic. What do you got to lose? It's like, man, maybe I need to put my faith in something, right? Because, you know, already a lot of things are not working out. So when we start from there, and I see that there's a power in faith, right? And we all live by faith no matter what. Right. You know, we all live by faith, even if you feel that you don't have any faith. That's already your faith, right? I don't have any faith. That's your faith right there. So at the end of the day, when we could really have the starting point saying we all created equal, and maybe what I know, it's not necessarily the whole truth. Maybe what I've learned, I'm coming from a Latino background, you know, there is colorism and racism in the Latino community, right? And there is a lot of segregation already in our city, and even in the faith community. So what can we start doing? I think it's about listening first. So I'm going to do the same thing, and I want to pass it on to Pastor McDonald. So there's it. All right.
Well, you know, let me say this. I grew up in Harlem, in New York City. So I grew up when America was just black and white. So I've always known racism. But the good thing about New York, everybody knew their place. You know, that's why we didn't have riots, because the city would not have survived. So when you're looking at it, all lives matter in the context of Black Lives Matter, I think a lot of times people, they don't realize that it's only been blacks killed for the last 400 years. So there's a lack of knowledge. You know, people just see a generation that's fed up. In the 60s, the older generation, you know, they accepted the promises. They accepted that things would be fair, and they just went to sleep. But the mass incarcerations, the killings, you're talking 400 years. So it's not like everybody's house is on fire. Somebody said it to me like this: if there is a fire at one house, all the other houses do not matter at this moment. The house on fire is the house that matters. So in context of all lives matter, it's too broad. And when you look at it, and my brother is in Australia, they're in London. It's global. People have been killing blacks for hundreds of years and getting away with it. So it's not about all lives matter at this moment, because if all lives matter, then they would still keep killing blacks. So I think people need to focus that it's Black Lives Matter for that particular reason, because for, you know, you're talking 400 years in the system in place allows, now I'm from New York. Like I said, I remember when they first started calling blacks African Americans. That's how old I am. You know, I grew up black. I didn't grow up African American. And so when you see how blacks have been killed, and I've seen it. I've had friends killed. My brother was killed. And I remember one time I was eating breakfast. Somebody got shot up. I was young. I went back to eat breakfast. Killing blacks was normal. You follow what I'm saying? So, and it's been entrenched. It goes back to slavery. And I remember when I first started pastoring a church, they used to say things to black people like, blacks need to get over it. You know, they need to just, you know, let the healing begin. How can somebody be healed when you're still hurting them? And I'll say this, every other culture, now Pastor Shoemaker, we grew up pretty much in the same generation, every other culture has come to this country and benefited because they killed a black man. And nobody ever says thank you to the black man. They just keep putting them down and keep killing them. And so when you begin to look at it, all lives matter, but it's that black man that's dying. It's that black man, Martin Luther King, that was killed. So it's, and it goes back to when I was in school, they never taught that blacks were anything other than slaves. And then they showed how you treated a slave. So society continually perpetuated that, even in churches. There was a Dake's annotated Bible that promoted slavery. A Christian book commentary promoted slavery until a black preacher called the publishers and they changed it. So all lives do matter in the eyes of God, but in America, it's the black lives that have been getting killed, and that's what matters worldwide. This is not about all lives matter. This is about people recognizing that they couldn't care less if a black guy was killed. But now they're finally caring. They're finally realizing. And, you know, and I believe God did it. I don't believe that the consciousness of people would be as clear had there not been a pandemic. I believe those 85 days gave people a chance to recognize, I don't have nothing else to do. And then when it was on the news, they saw it. You know, everybody, now just stay with me one more second. Everybody was afraid, right, that they was going to die from COVID-19. So mortality was a part of everyone's understanding. So now they're conscious of their own lives, and now they see a black man murdered on national television. Just like when they were walking on the bridge in national TV on Sunday, they finally saw the police beating these black women, these black kids, the dogs. It's normal. What happens is people don't recognize killing blacks is normal in American society.
Wow.
But it's been suppressed. But there's a generation that's brave enough to say, we're tired of you killing us.
Wow.
You know, and that's why it's not about all lives mattering right now. Not, you know, listen, my church is multicultural. We love people, but if somebody's hurting, don't make a difference what culture you are. You know, you always go to where the hurt is. And right now the hurt is in that black community.
Wow. Thank you, man, because you actually pushed my another question for me. It's interesting, as you guys are saying this, and, you know, as it relates to faith dealing with injustice, one thing I will say is that I believe that what faith does give us, it gives us hope, because it's our faith that keeps us believing that things will change and things can change. But I like what you said, Pastor Rich, because that is actually my next question. Because in this, when you just said all lives matter, as faith leaders, and I want to sort of frame this question to sort of coincide with what Pastor Rich said. I was having a conversation one day with somebody, and it was the same type of question. And when there was Black Lives Matters, the response rather was All Lives Matters. And while that was theoretically true, one thing that I did say was that it's almost the equivalent, on one hand, of I'm married, right? And so if my wife says, "Baby, do you love me?" and my response is, "I love everybody," right? It's not really specific to the question. And I believe what Pastor Rich was saying is that there is a community who almost feels like, while all lives do matter, it can pose as a cover-up to ignore the fact that so many Black people have never felt like their lives matters. And so as faith leaders, how do we address this statement of all lives matter in the context of Black Lives Matter? So I want to ask you guys that question. How do we address the reality that all lives do matter, but when you put it to the context of Black Lives Matter? So Pastor Rich sort of started us down this pathway. So I'm going to ask somebody else if you would just jump in and give us your thoughts.
Yeah, if I could go just for the sake of switching it up a little bit. Yeah, I believe that the consciousness that I hope, I mean, Pastor McDonald mentioned it right away. I think that the setup of the COVID time allowed us to see the world in a different way. We're losing a lot. Everything, all the agendas, everything stopped. And I think the fragility of life was something that was a little bit more in front of us, in our minds. And you know, I hope, you know, coming from my experience, that people see the benefit of all the other races, especially here in the United States, on the backs of the pain and suffering that the African American community went through. That there's a lot of benefits that the Latino church has gotten. I spoke about this with my church in our Spanish congregation, and say we have those benefits based on what a lot of other people put in, and our communities are built next to one another. You know what I'm saying? Like, we live next to one another. And it was, I get the benefit of a brand new park, because a lot of the Black American churches fought for years for that park to be cleaned up, because they were just dumping things in a place where, you know, you see that all the systemic injustices is something that has been affecting all of us. So when we all realize the benefit, and I would even call the privileges that we have based on another group of people and the pain of other people, it's something that I hope that I'm an immigrant. I'm Latino, I'm a pastor, but that we see that there's a lot of history that hasn't been told. So I agree 100%. You know, all lives cannot matter until Black Lives Matter. So I agree with that.
I agree. I think the way to face that cannot go without unity and understanding that we all matter when we are united. There was a small lesson I learned when I was young. There was an animal attack 2 cows. One of them is black and the other was brown. And somehow the animal just made one of them natural, the brown one, and he killed the black cow. Then later on, promising not to touch the brown cow. Then later on, he killed the brown cow, and the brown cow is saying, "I died on the same day that the black cow died." What that means is, if black life doesn't matter now, tomorrow the Latino life is not gonna matter, the Jewish life is not gonna matter, the Arab life is not gonna matter, the Muslim, whatever the religion, whatever the thing is, one by one, we're not gonna matter or exist. But united, even the white, even if the white is if they are the majority now and they are doing, some of them are doing that, one time a white minority will be attacked somehow. So it's time now to united, time now to stand up for each other, and time now to understand that we are next if we cannot get together and work together.
Thank you. either Pastor Shoemaker or Sister Carolyn, do you want to jump in on this?
I just want to say this. From a Buddhist point of view, one of the concepts we have is this notion of anger. And anger is the idea that, we're strongly attached to the idea of our own superiority, and we cannot bear to admit that anyone exceeds us in anything. And it's about having a selfish, greedy, distorted ego, determined to beat all others at all costs, and seeing everything as a potential threat to ourselves. So when I think about that term anger and how we understand anger, I really think it's the ethos of America. And that in its most extreme form, it takes the form of racism, right? And so like Pastor Richardson said, sort of killing Black people, slavery, but it also took the form of the genocide against Native Americans. In the Southwest or California, it also includes, denigrating the lives of Latinos, of Mexicans, of Chicanos. So I think at the root of our suffering is this notion that, and all of us have it, anger and this feeling that, how am I different from someone else? How am I better? In the most extreme form, it is racism. But I think in America, it takes the form in terms of the way we're just caught up in buying things. So we have to have the latest product, and it has to be the newest product. And that gives us a sense that we're superior to someone who doesn't have that product. So sort of kind of looking at the concept of Black Lives Matter, all lives matter, I think we're all human. It is true. We are all, from a Buddhist point of view, we all have Buddha nature, but we also have sort of weaknesses that permeate all of us, every individual. And that's our human struggle, to overcome the weaknesses we have individually and collectively. So I know I kind of took it in a different direction, but I really believe as I thought about this moment we find ourselves in, what is it that we really need to do to change society? And I think we have to pull out that root of suffering of Americans, whatever form it takes, but it's anger and this need to feel like in some way or another, I'm better than this other person. So I don't know, maybe I've opened it up in a whole different way, but I guess what I'm trying to do is like open up the discussion so that all of us can look at ourselves and say, what do I bring to the table and what do I need to change to make this country a better place? Right. Because I feel if I change, it's going to help. I'm going to open up the door for others to change.
Interesting, very much so. Pastor Shoemaker, do you want to chime in on this?
I don't know if I have anything more to add. I think one of the things as far as the all lives matter, when you're on one side, you've got the power, which, basically white privilege and all that. When people come back with that, say all lives matter, they're trying to there's something about excluding some others. I have a feeling I'll probably get in trouble for saying that, but that's my personal opinion. I like the scripture that talks about doing justice and love mercy and walk humbly with your God. And we have that kind of attitude that should help us in this journey. We have to battle with prejudices. There's things I have a feeling have, that we sometimes look at ourselves a little step above somebody. And we have to realize that and stop and think about what we're saying. Yeah. Stop and think about it. When I grew up, where I grew up out in the country, there wasn't anybody but my color, but there were Amish people. Well, who are the people we did look down at? The Amish people. So, there's always somebody that way. Mm-hmm.
So I want to pose a question. I want to stay in this vein just a little bit because I still want to dig a little deeper. I feel like we still haven't touched the question properly. the imam opened up and said something that really made me think, and he began to talk about how different it was in America, and that was the key point. I want to ask you guys something, and I had a conversation with actually Pastor Lipe about this. Do you feel like when you talk about the Americans' treatment of Black people, do you feel like it's any different in America? And I say this because one of the things that me and Pastor Lipe spoke about was that I believe that everyone else who came to this country came as immigrants, while Black people came as imports. And so from the beginning, we were not seen as human beings, we were seen as property. And so do you guys think that maybe in American view, so when we say Black Lives Matter, let's bring it to what you see in our nation. Do you think that that question means a little bit more when you bring it back down to America's treatment of Black people? So I want to put that question back out there. Go ahead, Pastor Rich. I see you raising your hand. You got to unmute yourself, sir.
You know, I'm glad you mentioned that because we're all from different faiths, even different complexions. When you look at it, it's money. It's money. You know, mankind, sinful mankind is evil. But when money becomes an equation, they're not going to give up their money. You know, our Christianity comes from Judaism, which comes from 400 years in slavery. They were Egypt's money, right? According to the Bible, they were Egypt's money. They bring the Blacks over, they were the whites' money. Blacks have always been money. So when you look at slavery, it starts with money. It's still, if you follow incarceration, if you follow the selling of products, you know, it's about money. And a lot of times people don't realize it, but it's this, you know, they made these human beings less than animals so that they can become rich. And no one gives up their wealth willingly. You follow what I'm saying? And so just like God had to deliver Israel, maybe God's delivering the Black man. 400 years later, maybe God has heard all those cries of those slaves in those fields for all those years. And God says, now is my time, let my people go. But it's all about money. You know, if you trace it, you just follow the money. They brought them over here for money. They used them for money. Even when they were freed, they made them work to pay off a debt that they didn't even incur. And when you look at Blacks, a lot of them, you know, don't have the opportunity to get out of poverty. You hear what I'm saying? And the system is so designed. You know, you got so many people come from other countries. They were able to get stuff that the Black man will be denied of. They have so many, and you've seen this, if you can go, they have so many documentaries on how a Black person could not get the right rate at a bank. You see, and this is hundreds of years, and in other cultures coming to this country, they have no problem. They get a bank loan, they get this and that. And it's because, you know, just like the sister said, you know, anger, but it's really hatred. You know, man is wicked. And, you know, I know I went a little further than the question. So the black man has been just used as money. You know, and that's why a lot of times, even in the Black community, they said the only way you're going to change people's perspective is when you stop buying their products. Sorry, this.
Oh no, listen, I'm loving this conversation. I can't believe we have 11 minutes left. I'm like, what happened to the hour? I need to hit Sam to see if we can get an extra 10 minutes. No, this is great. Anybody else want to
I want to say something. From a Buddhist point of view,
What?
I just want to say that we believe that everyone can change their circumstances through chanting, taking total ownership of changing their reality. I know it sounds fanciful, but you know, I don't know if any of you have seen What's Love Got to Do with It. You know, Tina Turner was in a very bad relationship, right? She started chanting. She started our practice and totally transformed her life. Our practice is about getting people not to accept whatever society says they are due or not due, but to help people realize that they have this enormous potential to transform any situation. But it starts with, like, for us, chanting, determining, and never giving up. And we've got many, you know, success stories of members who've overcome all kinds of challenges, including sort of racism
Right.
in the workplace or what have you. So, I mean, I acknowledge what you're saying, but the question is, we can't be, we're not victims. And we have to say, I'm going to change this. I'm going to change it to show people what is possible. That, you know, if I can change it, they can change it, and I'm going to help them change it.
No, thank you. Listen, and please don't, we have different perspectives for a reason,
Yeah.
right?
Yes.
So
Yes.
because what we have before us is an opportunity to tackle one issue
Sure.
from different aspects.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I'm gonna sort of lead you to the last question because my time is going crazy. But the thing that's amazing and what makes this panel amazing is that this is a time in the world where you're seeing people from all walks of life rallying around one thing, right? You have people in other countries, people in other races who are all screaming, I can't breathe. They're all screaming Black Lives Matter. And so when they come together, what brings them together is the fact that we agree on this. And so how do we bring what we bring to the table to deal with this one thing? And so I believe that we're here tonight because we can all hit this from different angles, but ultimately the hopeful source is to eradicate this thing that has been lingering for way too long. So I just want to say, please, we wanted different people on here, so you do not have to apologize at all because we wanted different perspectives. So we're still on that same question. If anyone wants to chime back in on that. Okay, I'll move to another question because that leads to another question here is that, so as I was saying, here we are in a moment where we have so many people, the NFL, who absolutely years ago was totally against this, has come out and said, you know what, even we're wrong. And so we have a moment where we see people coming together. My last question is, as faith leaders, what can we do, or how can we do our part to encourage our communities to stand together against racial injustice? So as faith leaders.
Yeah. Yeah, I would like to add on our part. I do believe this is I agree 100% with what Pastor McDonald was saying. Like, I think God has orchestrated this moment for everybody to join in the house that is burning, and the person that cannot breathe, and the people that has been hurting for too long. And I'll be honest with you, one of the things that I started doing with my congregation is teaching them empathy. The power of empathy is probably one of the skills that we lack the most. And I have two young kids. I have a son that is 6 years old, a daughter that is 4 years old, and everything we got to teach them all the time is like, hey, you got to learn how to empathize and how to think for the other person. And when I started reading all the names of the victims to police brutality, and I did this with my reality, and I started thinking, what if all those last names were Hispanic last names and Latino last names? It just feels outrageous. And the fact that for too long people were silent, this is the moment where everybody has to speak up and continue to speak up. Because when you could empathize with the hurt that supposedly is not yours, which I think it is everybody's, but you know, I'm gonna say it's not directly you know, because we're immigrants, we came here voluntarily, like you said, Pastor Shyrone. You know, Black Americans were brought here. So the fact that we could come together and start developing empathy, and start doing something, like I agree 100% with, you know, with Sister Carolyn. You know, it's moving the church to start eradicating the main thing in Jersey City is that our Black and brown young men have the biggest dropout rate. They have the lowest grades in our city. I used to be on the school board. Is one of the main things that bother me the most. And how do we do that? Well, now we need to give them new models. Let's start being more mentors. Let's start building together with our local schools. Let's support our local schools. Hopefully the public schools, which is the one that helps the most of Black and brown kids in our community. So that's the one thing that I'm motivating people, that you could do something, whether you work close, you work in Jersey City, you live in Jersey City, or you have family here, you could do something. It starts with just getting active.
Yeah. And I'll say this, I mean, it is 8:56, guys. We are going to definitely have to do a part 2. But I want to say this, and I want to show you the beauty of this, right? So Pastor Rich brought a focus that says, listen, while every house is important, in this moment, there's a house that's been on fire that hasn't gotten water, right? And so a part of us as faith leaders is being willing to say, hey, brothers and sisters, let's make sure that we put that house out, because our house is at this point is not on fire. Our brother, the Imam, brought back something which we all need to know, because ultimately, if we realize the power of unity and we get to the place where we are our brother's keeper, where we love our brother as ourselves, then there's no room for racism, right? Carolyn told us, listen, that the power of empowerment, because through it all, we can never believe that we can't get up, right? We can never believe that we have to stay in this position. And so through things like prayer, through things like meditation, it reminds us, for Christians, prayer connects us to our Creator. We believe that connection reminds us that we're bigger than our situation. Pastor Shoemaker said, listen, one of the greatest things we can do is listen, right? Because ultimately, sometimes we make the mistake of giving the answer before we hear the question, right? And so just by taking some time to hear another's perspective, because if we don't do that, we'll always put our answer on somebody, and it might not be the answer that they need. Pastor Lipe, listen, man, I love that dude. I'm biased toward him. And one of the things he brought to the table is just stepping back and recognizing that maybe we are privileged. Maybe there's some privileges that I'm experiencing that came on the back of somebody else. But the beauty of this is that as faith leaders, we have influence in areas where we can take all these things that we've learned and spread them to people who can spread them to people, so that when we come together, we can do in the faith community what we see happening in the world. And that is coming together to say this thing will not stand anymore on our watch. And as our brother said, because if today is this, but me and Pastor Lipe talked about, what about DACA? What about what's going on in that community? And I believe if we come together and put one fire out at a time and put all of our energy into making sure that house is clear, we go to the next house, that we'll find our block will be safe for everybody to live on. Is that all right? Well, guys, listen, we are out of time. This was amazing. I want to thank, listen, you panelists, thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Hopefully we get to do this again. Those that are watching, thank you. Please, if you enjoyed this, I enjoyed this, share this, and start emailing everything Jersey City. Say, listen, we need a part 2. We need a part 2, because it was just getting good and I want some seconds, all right? But we're going to say goodbye. Once again, Pastor Rich, Sister Carolyn, our Imam, Shoemaker, Lipe, everything Jersey City. Thank you. Miss Angela McKnight, who normally does this on Friday night. Thank you for letting me sit in for you. And we want you to just continue. Let's keep moving in the right direction.
Amen.
Thank you.
All right.
Pastor Rich. I said Pastor Shoemaker, don't worry. Your wife calling you. My wife sending me signals from across the room. But we want to say thank you. Good night, guys. Have a wonderful weekend.
Thank you.
Hopefully we'll get to talk.
Thank
All
you.
right. Good night. Good night.
Good night.